I'm Tantek Celick, and I work with microformats.org. I'm one of the co-founders. I spend most of my time doing that, and I'm reporting to you here from SG Foo 2008, an event at O'Reilly's campus. And this has been an incredible weekend. So I've gotten to meet a lot of the people that I've seen online or electronically and had never gotten a chance to interact with in person. And that's probably like one of the most valuable things that I think I've gotten out of this event is that you meet the people you put a face and a voice with a name, and then all of a sudden like your online interactions become a lot easier. And it's something that I wouldn't underestimate for anyone that works online, in the internet medium or web medium, is to at least try and meet some of the people that you interact with, because I think it improves communication a lot. So this particular food camp, I wasn't entirely sure what to expect, because unlike previous food camps, it's focused on SG, on the social graph, or some of us like to say like social networks, and the whole science and technology and social aspects. In addition, it was clear from the list of attendees that everyone really had like a pretty close focus, and so having a whole weekend to just talk about like this one space of topic, we're like, well, are we really going to be able to have enough to talk about? And we certainly did, and I think we could have gone talking for another week easily. And this whole event, just the fact that we even just like having this kind of an event to bring people together to talk about these issues is just really heartening to me. I remember for me this the journey really started back in 2003 when I was at a South by Southwest conference attending, and basically ended up meeting up with Eric Meyer, who's a CSS expert, and Matthew Mullenweg, who at the time had just started developing something called WordPress, which you may have heard of these days. And we got together and we're like, hey, there's these social networks like Friendster that make everyone just go and use their one site. But there's this emerging social network called blogs and blog rolls. And from that, we basically said, hey, what if we just add a little semantic HTML, use the rel attribute, say rel equals friend, indicate to people, indicate to machines what people could already see on your blog roll visibly. And we put together a draft back in 2003, got it out in December, so it took 9 months from South by Southwest to December. And within a matter of weeks, people had implemented it in a bunch of different tools and sites, and we were amazed. So that was kind of like what kicked this off for me, the XHTML Friends Network, XFN, letting people declare on their blogs their friendships and relationships rather than having to necessarily go to a social network site at the time and answer the "Are you my friend? Yes or no" type questions. Fast forward from there, a lot of the people started to look at the problems of profiles and how do you represent a person online, and for me, that kind of all the different pieces kind of collided at Food Camp 04, actually, 2004, where there's a bunch of different sessions on like how do we do HTML for people, how do we do HTML for calendars, and a bunch of us got together and I said, well, what if we just took some of the internet standards we know, like vCard, the internet standard for contact information that everyone's calendar email program and address book supports, or iCalendar, and use the vocabulary from those standards from the IETF, but in HTML, in semantic HTML. And I remember like just that weekend writing up a short draft and showing the ideas to Ray Ozzie, at the time who was working at doing Groove. And he's like, well, is this crazy or is this something that might work? He's like, yeah, you should try it. Just try it, make it work. So that's where HCard came from, was just this idea of like, can we take the well-established and researched and standardized vCard vocabulary and use it in HTML. From that, since then, lots of social network sites came up, right? There's been the whole Orkut took off, MySpace took off, and now Facebook took off. And this whole notion of wanting to actually own your own identity, own your own persona on the web has kind of grown beyond just like the sort of the geek crowd. People like to have their own domain name, whether it's for vanity purposes or business purposes or whatever. They like to have the sense that they control on the information they're putting out there. And finally, some of these standards that we worked on for a while that have been baked into tools for a little while, people realizing, oh, we can put these together and do some amazing things. Fast forward to 2 days ago, Brad Fitzpatrick of Google launches the SG API, the Social Graph API, where he's basically written code to go out there and index all the XFN links. And so you can basically say, hey, I own Tantek.com. That's me. That represents me as a person. Who am I connected to and how am I connected to them? And it tells you. And that's just incredibly powerful. And given that we just now have all these like tools and searches and APIs that can do all this, bringing people together, realizing that, hey, we can actually connect, we can actually build sites better, the better respect user data, the better respect user privacy and all that was really an amazing experience. And out of this, there's already been, at least a half dozen sites that have been adding more, data format, open data format support to their sites, that adding XFN, HCard, and all that good stuff. So, what's next? I think that we made this huge amount of progress in a short amount of time. I think that even coming out of this, there's other folks that, like in another week or two, are going to announce, make some pretty good announcements about more support for open standards, and I think that's really great to see. I think that there's also the DISO project, Distributed Social Networking Project, which is about enabling platforms like WordPress itself, which is kind of where a lot of this began with XFN, to fully support this idea of, here's my identity on the web, so that anyone can just get a domain name, install WordPress, and go. And I think that we're going to learn a lot of lessons about importing friends lists, importing your profile from other profiles, but also subscribing, and even delegating. So I think I'm hoping that we'll get to the point where if you want to develop a new social application, rather than having to go build for a specific social network platform, just for a specific site, you can actually build a website and not have to actually have a profile interface or a friends interface at all, but instead just ask the user, hey, where do you keep your profile on friends list today? And we'll just use that because you're using open standards, and we support open standards, and we can make it interoperate. And that way, the application site developer can focus on what they do best. Something like Doppler that supports travel information, right? Or something like like Upcoming that supports like event coordination type things. And I think that that's lowering the barrier to creating more social sites means that we'll get more social sites, we'll get more applications developed, and I think that everyone benefits, especially the users. I think that's a good thing. That's kind of what it's all about.